I'm Serena, 67 years old, a retired elementary school teacher from suburban Boston. Nothing could have prepared me for the shock of being physically pushed out of a home I owned by my own son, Ryan, and his wife, Amanda. We were once so close, sharing everything, until Amanda came into the picture. That day, as I drove home with tears streaming down my face, I knew our relationship had changed forever. Before I tell you how my own flesh and blood turned against me, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to join our community of survivors. 15 years ago, my husband Frank passed away suddenly from a heart attack. One moment we were planning our retirement, and the next I was a widow at 52, left to navigate the world alone. Well, not completely alone. I still had my son Ryan, who was 25 at the time and just starting his career. I had raised Ryan mostly by myself even before Frank died. My husband was a good man, but his work as a commercial pilot kept him away from home for days at a time. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and waitressing on weekends to make sure Ryan had everything he needed growing up. Those years were tough, but seeing my son thrive made every sacrifice worthwhile. From the time Ryan was little, we had a special bond. I still remember how he would wait up for me when I came home from my weekend shifts, just so he could tell me about his day. In middle school, he would bring his homework to the kitchen table while I graded papers, and we'd work side by side in comfortable silence. During high school, when many teenagers distanced themselves from their parents, Ryan and I remained close. He'd confide in me about girl problems, friend drama, and his dreams for the future. After Frank died, our bond grew even stronger. Ryan was my rock during those dark days of grief. He'd come over every Sunday for dinner, a tradition we maintained even after he moved into his own apartment in Boston. Sometimes he'd bring his laundry, and I'd tease him about it, but truthfully, I cherished those moments of normalcy and connection. Ryan excelled in his career as a software engineer. I didn't understand half of what he did with computers, but I was so proud watching him climb the corporate ladder. Each promotion or achievement, he'd call me first with the news. "Mom, guess what happened today?" he'd say, and my heart would swell with pride. When Ryan was 28, he got engaged to his college girlfriend, Megan. I adored Megan. She was kind, thoughtful, and respected the relationship Ryan and I had. Unfortunately, about 6 months before the wedding, Megan realized she wasn't ready for marriage and broke things off. Ryan was devastated. He showed up at my doorstep that night with red-rimmed eyes, and I held him just like when he was a little boy with a skinned knee. For months afterward, he spent more time at my house than his own apartment. I cooked his favorite meals and gave him space to heal. Slowly, he found his way back to himself, focusing on his career, and eventually starting to date again, casually. 3 years after the broken engagement, when Ryan was 32, he called me one Sunday morning, sounding happier than he had in years. "Mom, I've met someone special," he said. "Her name is Amanda, and I really want you to meet her." I was thrilled. All I ever wanted was for my son to be happy, and he certainly deserved it after everything with Megan. When he brought Amanda to meet me the following weekend, I was ready to love anyone who put that spark back in my son's eyes. For years, Ryan had always said the same thing to me whenever I expressed worry about growing older alone. "Don't worry, Mom," he'd say. "I'll always take care of you, just like you took care of me." Those words had been my comfort through many lonely nights after Frank died. I never expected Ryan to support me financially, but knowing I had his emotional support meant everything. The Christmas before he met Amanda, Ryan had given me a card that still sits in my bedside drawer. Inside, he'd written, "To the strongest woman I know, thank you for everything you've sacrificed for me. One day, I hope to repay even a fraction of what you've given me." When I think about how things changed, that card reminds me of the son I raised The son I know is still in there somewhere beneath Amanda's influence. Those early days, watching Ryan rebuild his life and career while maintaining our close relationship, were some of the happiest of my life. I had no idea that the arrival of Amanda would begin to unravel the beautiful bond we had spent decades creating. The first time I met Amanda was at La Cantina, an upscale Italian restaurant in Boston that Ryan knew I loved. He had called me earlier that week, practically bubbling with excitement. "She's amazing, Mom," he'd said. "I think she might be the one." Amanda arrived at the restaurant looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Tall and slender, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair, designer clothes, and a dazzling smile. She greeted me with a warm hug and compliments about my scarf. Throughout dinner, she was attentive, asking thoughtful questions about my teaching career and listening with apparent interest to stories about Ryan's childhood. "Ryan tells me you were Superwoman," she said, touching my hand across the table. "Raising him alone while working 2 jobs? That's incredible." I was charmed. After Megan, who had been more like a daughter to me, I worried no one would measure up. But Amanda seemed perfect, and Ryan was clearly smitten. His eyes barely left her face all evening. What I didn't realize then was that Amanda was auditioning for a role. Once she secured her place in Ryan's life, the performance would gradually fade away. Their relationship progressed at whirlwind speed. Within 6 months, Ryan called to tell me they were engaged. I was surprised at the rush, especially since they'd only known each other such a short time, but Ryan dismissed my gentle concerns. "When you know, Mom," he said, repeating what I'd heard so many young people in love say before. Looking back, there were warning signs I either missed or chose to ignore. Like how Ryan's Sunday visits became less frequent. First, they changed from every week to every other week. Then they became monthly, with Amanda often finding last-minute reasons why they couldn't make it. "Amanda's got a migraine," he'd text an hour before they were due to arrive. Or, "Something came up with Amanda's family. Rain check?" When they did visit, Amanda would check her watch frequently or take work calls that mysteriously needed her immediate attention. The warm, engaged woman from our first meeting was gradually replaced by someone cooler, more distant. There were subtle put-downs, too. Comments about my quaint home decor or how certain opinions I expressed were so old school. Nothing overtly rude, just small paper cuts that stung, but seemed too minor to address. Once, when I called Ryan on a Wednesday evening as I'd done for years, Amanda answered his phone. "Oh, Serena," she said, her voice tinged with slight annoyance. "Ryan and I were just heading to bed. We have an early morning tomorrow. Can this wait until the weekend?" It was only 8 o'clock. My friend Donna, who had met Amanda at Ryan's birthday dinner, pulled me aside afterward. "Watch that one," she warned. "When you went to the ladies' room, she made a comment about how you talked too much about your teaching days. Said it was, and I quote, boring as watching paint dry." I brushed off Donna's concerns. "She's just young," I said. "She'll mature into the relationship." But the distance between Ryan and me continued to grow. He stopped calling me first with good news. When I heard he'd received a major promotion at work from our mutual friend Tom and called to congratulate him, he seemed embarrassed. "Oh yeah, sorry, Mom. It's been crazy busy. Amanda's planning a celebration dinner with some work friends this weekend." Work friends. Not his mother, who had supported his career from the beginning. One Sunday, when they did come for dinner, I overheard Amanda on the phone in my guest bathroom. "Yes, we're at his mother's," she was saying, her voice dripping with disdain. "No, the food is exactly what you'd expect. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes like we're in a 1950s sitcom. One more hour, then I told Ryan we need to leave." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart aching. Should I confront her? Tell Ryan. But what if he didn't believe me? What if it created a rift that pushed him even further away? I said nothing, but the knowledge that Amanda was two-faced gnawed at me. As their wedding approached, I found myself caught in an impossible situation. I could see Amanda's true colors emerging more clearly every day, but pointing this out risked alienating my son completely. So I smiled and nodded and pretended not to notice as my relationship with my only child slowly slipped through my fingers like sand. The wedding planning process was my first real taste of being sidelined in my son's life. When I called Ryan to offer help with preparations, he seemed uncomfortable. "Actually, Mom, Amanda, and her mother have most of it under control," he said. "But I'll let you know if we need anything." That call never came. Instead, I watched from the periphery as Amanda's parents, the wealthy Caldwells from Beacon Hill, took center stage. Her mother, Victoria, a former debutante with a permanent look of mild disdain, orchestrated everything from venue selection to the wedding party attire. When I did try to participate, offering to host the rehearsal dinner, as is tradition for the groom's family, Victoria dismissed me with practiced politeness. "Oh, Serena, that's sweet," she said with a thin smile. "But we've already booked the yacht club. Perhaps you could handle the welcome bags for out-of-town guests." The welcome bags, like I was some distant relative rather than the mother of the groom. The wedding itself was an elaborate affair at the Caldwell family's country club in Manchester by the Sea. 300 guests, though I could count my personal invites on one hand. The ceremony was beautiful, of course, but I felt like a spectator rather than a participant in this milestone moment of my son's life. During the reception, I was seated at a table far from the wedding party with distant relatives of the Caldwells who spoke mainly to each other. When it came time for speeches, Amanda's father gave a 20-minute monologue about his daughter's accomplishments and how Ryan was lucky to be joining such a distinguished family. My own speech was limited to a brief 2 minutes with Amanda's mother, reminding me to keep it short and sweet, dear. As I watched Ryan and Amanda share their first dance, I tried to focus on my son's happiness rather than my own feelings of exclusion. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, gazing adoringly at his new bride. I wanted to believe that was enough, that his joy would compensate for the growing hole in my heart. Later that evening, I accidentally overheard Amanda complaining to her bridesmaids in the ladies' lounge. I had entered a stall without them noticing my presence. "Ryan's mom keeps trying to get photos with us," she said with an exasperated sigh. "I swear she thinks this day is about her or something. And did you see that dress at least 2 seasons out of date?" The bridesmaids tittered sympathetically while I sat frozen in the stall, hot tears threatening to spill. The dress Amanda mocked had cost nearly a month's pension, carefully saved for this special occasion. When I finally gathered the courage to speak to Ryan about how I was feeling a week after they returned from their honeymoon in Bali, paid for by the Caldwells, he immediately became defensive. "Amanda's just particular about how she wants things, Mom," he said, a new edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "The wedding was stressful for everyone. You need to try harder to get along with her." Try harder I had been nothing but accommodating, swallowing my hurt feelings time and again. "I'm just saying," I ventured carefully, "I feel like we're not as close as we used to be. I miss our Sunday dinners and regular calls." Ryan's expression hardened. "Things change when you get married, Mom. Amanda and I are building our own life together. You need to respect that and give us space." Space. The word felt like a physical barrier being erected between us. The first holiday season after their wedding was the loneliest I'd experienced since Frank died. For 20 years, Ryan and I had spent Christmas Eve and morning together, even after he moved out. It was our tradition. But that December, Ryan called with news that crushed me. "We'll be spending Christmas with Amanda's family at their vacation home in Vermont," he said. "They've invited her whole extended family. Maybe we can do something the weekend after New Year's." I spent Christmas Eve alone looking at old photo albums and wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I been too close to Ryan, too involved in his life? Was this normal mother-in-law tension or something more concerning? As the snow fell outside my quiet house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my son in ways that went beyond the normal evolution of parent-child relationships. The hardest part was seeing Ryan change. The considerate, loving son who once called just to check in was being replaced by someone who seemed to view me as an obligation rather than a beloved parent. Each time we did speak, he was quicker to take offense, faster to defend Amanda, even when she wasn't being criticized. It was as though he was seeing me through her eyes now, and I didn't recognize the person he was seeing. About a year after the wedding, Ryan called me out of the blue on a Tuesday evening. His voice had the excited quality I remembered from his childhood. "Mom, do you have time to meet for coffee tomorrow? There's something Amanda and I want to discuss with you." We met at a cafe near my house. I arrived early, my mind racing with possibilities. Were they moving away? Was Amanda pregnant? Had Ryan finally recognized the distance between us and wanted to repair it? When they arrived, Amanda was uncharacteristically pleasant, actually hugging me without the usual stiffness. Ryan couldn't stop smiling as they settled into the seats across from me. "So," Ryan began, "we've been looking for a house." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased. They had been renting an expensive apartment in Cambridge that Amanda often complained about. "The problem is," Amanda continued, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the table, "the Boston housing market is impossible right now. Everything in decent neighborhoods is completely out of reach." Ryan nodded. "We've been to so many open houses, and either the places are total disasters or the bidding wars push them way beyond our budget." "Even with both our salaries," Amanda added, "we can't compete with these all-cash offers from investors. And my parents already helped with the wedding and honeymoon, so—" She trailed off, looking meaningfully at me. The implication hung in the air. I had a substantial retirement fund built over decades of careful saving and Frank's life insurance policy. I had planned to use it for my later years, possibly assisted living, if I needed it eventually. But looking at my son's hopeful face, I found myself considering something I hadn't planned. "What if," I said slowly, "I helped you with the down payment, or even purchased a house that you could eventually buy from me?" Their faces lit up simultaneously. Ryan reached across the table and squeezed my hand, a gesture of affection I hadn't felt in months. "Mom, that would be amazing, but we couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering," I said, already mentally calculating what I could afford. "We could work out a fair arrangement. Maybe the house could be in my name initially, and you could pay me monthly building equity until you can take over the mortgage." Amanda, usually so controlled, actually clapped her hands. "Serena, that would be incredible. We'd be so grateful." Over the next few weeks, we consulted with my financial advisor and a real estate attorney to structure the arrangement properly. I would provide the down payment, about 30% of the purchase price, from my retirement savings. The house would be in my name, but Ryan and Amanda would make monthly payments to me that would go toward eventually transferring ownership to them. The amount was less than they were currently paying in rent, but fair market value. My only request was that the house have a spare bedroom I could occasionally use when visiting, maybe a weekend every month or two. They readily agreed. The search began in earnest. Amanda had specific requirements, naturally. The house needed to be in a prestigious neighborhood, have at least 4 bedrooms for future family expansion, and require minimal renovation. After seeing nearly 20 properties, we found a beautiful colonial in Winchester, a sought-after suburb with excellent schools. The house was perfect, with a generous living room, updated kitchen, 4 bedrooms, and a lovely backyard. At one point during the viewing, Ryan took me aside. "Mom, are you sure about this? It's a lot of money." "I'm sure," I said, touched by his concern. "What else am I saving for, if not to help my family? And this way, I get to see you enjoy it now, not after I'm gone." The closing process went smoothly. I signed countless documents, handed over a substantial check, and just like that became the owner of a house I didn't plan to live in. but seeing Ryan's face when I handed him the keys made it worthwhile. The housewarming party was a grand affair, with Amanda giving tours to guests as if she'd designed the place herself. I overheard her more than once saying, "We bought this house," with no mention of my contribution, but I brushed it aside. This was their home now, even if technically I owned it. For the first year, the arrangement worked well. Ryan and Amanda made their payments on time. I visited occasionally, staying in the guest room we had agreed would be my room when I visited. Amanda wasn't exactly warm during these visits, but she was civil, and I got to maintain some connection to my son's life. Little did I know this precarious peace was about to crumble in ways I could never have imagined. It started with small comments. Amanda would mention how strange it was that my name was on their house. At first, these remarks were framed as jokes. "Don't worry, Serena, we won't trash your investment," she'd say with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes when I visited. But gradually, the pretense of humor faded. During one Sunday dinner at their house about 18 months after they moved in, Amanda brought up the subject directly. "Ryan and I were talking," she said, cutting her food into tiny, precise pieces. "It feels a bit, I don't know, awkward to have your name on our house, like we're children who can't be trusted with our own property." Ryan looked uncomfortable, but nodded. "It's not that we don't appreciate everything, Mom, but we were thinking maybe we could refinance soon and put the house in our names." I was taken aback. The agreement had been for at least 5 years before reassessing. "I understand how you feel," I said carefully. "But my financial advisor recommended the current arrangement to protect all of us. We can certainly revisit it in a few years as planned." Amanda's face tightened almost imperceptibly. The subject was dropped for the moment, but I sensed it wasn't resolved. A few months later, Ryan called with news that should have been joyous. "Mom, guess what? Amanda's pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." My heart soared. A grandchild. Despite the tension with Amanda, I was genuinely thrilled. "That's wonderful news, sweetheart. How's Amanda feeling? Is there anything I can do to help?" "She's doing well," Ryan said. "Morning sickness, but the doctor says that's normal. And actually, we wanted to talk to you about the house situation again." There it was, using the pregnancy as leverage. "We're going to need to convert the guest bedroom to a nursery," he continued. "And with the baby coming, we really want to feel like the house is fully ours." "Ryan," I said gently, "you know I support you both, and I'm so excited about the baby. But the financial arrangement we made is important for my security, too. The guest room was our agreement, but of course I understand about the nursery. Maybe the small office could be a guest room when I visit instead." There was a pause. "I'll talk to Amanda," he said finally. From that point on, the pregnancy became a wedge driving us further apart. When I offered to help with nursery preparations, Amanda declined. "We've hired a designer," she said dismissively. "It's all being handled professionally." I was not included in doctor appointments or ultrasound visits. When I asked Ryan if they knew the gender yet, he seemed surprised I didn't already know. "It's a boy," he said. "Amanda posted it on Facebook weeks ago." I hadn't been invited to the gender reveal party. In fact, I learned about the baby shower after it happened, seeing photos on social media of Amanda surrounded by her friends and family. My absence was conspicuous. During the rare times I did visit their house, I noticed subtle changes. Photos that had included me were gradually disappearing from display. A picture of Ryan's graduation day with his arm around me had been replaced by a professional portrait of Amanda. The small office that was supposed to become my new guest room when the nursery took over my original room was now filled with Amanda's exercise equipment. "Oh, I need to stay fit during pregnancy," she explained when I asked about it. "We'll figure something out when you visit." But increasingly, my visits were discouraged. Amanda claimed that having guests was too stressful during her pregnancy, that the smell of my perfume, which I'd worn for 20 years, suddenly triggered her nausea. that she needed complete quiet on weekends to rest. Ryan became her devoted protector. "Mom, you know I want to see you," he'd say during our increasingly rare phone conversations. "But Amanda needs me right now. The pregnancy is taking a lot out of her." Meanwhile, I noticed on social media that Amanda seemed to have plenty of energy for lunch with her friends, shopping trips with her mother, and even weekend getaways to the Caldwell's lake house. It was only visits from me that seemed to exhaust her. The final straw came when I overheard Amanda complaining to her mother on the phone during one of my brief visits, not realizing I had come back inside from the garden. "It's so frustrating," she was saying. "We're stuck in this arrangement with his mother holding the house over our heads. I don't want to raise my child in a home that doesn't fully belong to us. It's like we're living with the constant reminder that we couldn't do this on our own." Her mother's response was inaudible, but Amanda continued. "I know, Mom. Ryan needs to stand up to her and demand we restructure this whole thing. I'm tired of feeling like we're living in someone else's house." Someone else's house? The house I had sacrificed my financial security to provide for them. The house that had been my gift turned into something ugly and contentious. That night, driving home, I cried for the first time in years. My son was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on to him without giving up the last shred of dignity and security I had left. It happened on a crisp Saturday in October. I had spent the morning baking Ryan's favorite apple cinnamon bread, a recipe his grandmother had passed down to me. Amanda was 7 months pregnant now, and despite our strained relationship, I wanted to bring them some homemade food and a few small gifts for the baby. I hadn't called ahead. Perhaps that was my mistake, but dropping by unannounced had never been an issue before everything changed. Ryan was my son after all, and technically it was my house. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed unfamiliar furniture being moved in. A delivery truck was parked on the street with workers carrying what looked like an expensive leather sectional toward the house. Ryan answered the door, surprise evident on his face. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I brought some treats and baby things," I said, holding up the basket I had prepared. "Is this a bad time? I see you're getting new furniture." He hesitated before stepping aside to let me in. The living room had been completely transformed since my last visit a month ago. The warm, traditional decor had been replaced with sleek, modern pieces. Even the wall color had changed from the soft yellow I had helped them choose to a stark gray. "Wow," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You've been busy." Amanda appeared from the kitchen, her baby bump prominent under a fitted maternity dress. Her expression darkened when she saw me. "Serena, we weren't expecting you." "I just wanted to drop these off," I said, placing the basket on the hall table. "The bread is still warm." "Thanks," Amanda said flatly, making no move to take the basket. "Ryan, the delivery guys need to know where to put the new coffee table." As Ryan stepped outside to speak with the delivery men, I decided to head upstairs to use the bathroom. Passing the former guest room, I paused. The door was open, but instead of the nursery, I expected to see the room had been converted into a home office with an expensive-looking desk and computer setup. Confused, I continued down the hall and glanced into the master bedroom. There in the corner was a beautiful white crib with a mobile hanging above it. They had decided to keep the baby in their room rather than use the guest room, which made sense for newborns. But why the home office then? When I came back downstairs, Ryan was back inside, speaking quietly but intensely with Amanda. They fell silent when they saw me. "I noticed you've turned the guest room into an office," I said. "It looks nice. Will the baby be staying in your room for a while then?" Amanda crossed her arms over her baby bump. "We decided it makes more sense for the baby to be close to us, and Ryan needs a proper home office for when he works remotely." "I understand," I said, though a knot was forming in my stomach. So, when I come to visit, where will I be staying? The look that passed between them told me everything. There was no place for me anymore. Not in their home, not in their lives. Mom. Ryan began, his voice taking on that patronizing tone that had become so familiar. Amanda and I have been talking. We think it might be better if you stay at a hotel when you visit. With the baby coming, we'll need all the space we can get. A hotel? I repeated, my voice small. But we had an agreement about the guest room. That was part of our arrangement with the house. Amanda stepped forward, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Things change, Serena. We need to do what's best for our growing family. And frankly, it's stressful having house guests in your space with a newborn. But this is partly my house, I said, feeling something snap inside me. All the months of swallowed hurt and forced smiles culminated in that moment. My name is on the mortgage. I paid for it. Amanda's face flushed with anger. Here we go. You're always holding that over our heads. This is our home now, not yours. You don't live here. You visit occasionally, and quite frankly, those visits are becoming more trouble than they're worth. I turned to Ryan, expecting him to defend me, to remind his wife of all I had sacrificed for them, but his face had hardened. Mom, that's enough, he said. We appreciate what you did to help us get the house, but you need to stop bringing it up every chance you get. We're paying you back according to our agreement. I don't bring it up, I protested, tears threatening. I never mention it unless you two do. You don't have to mention it, Amanda snapped. It's always there, this power you think you have over us because your name is on some paperwork. The conversation escalated quickly. Amanda's voice rose, her words becoming more cutting. She accused me of trying to control their lives, of never giving Ryan room to be his own man, of treating them like children. With each accusation, my son nodded in agreement, his face a mask I didn't recognize. I think you should leave, Amanda finally said. Now. I stood my ground. This isn't right. We had an agreement, and I expect it to be honored. I'm not asking for much, just a place to stay when I visit my son and future grandchild. Amanda stepped toward me, then her face twisted with an anger that seemed to have been building for years. You need to go. Now. When I didn't move, immediately stunned by the venom in her voice, she actually put her hands on my shoulders and began guiding me toward the door. Not violently, but firmly, unmistakably pushing me out. Amanda, I gasped. Please don't push me. Instead of stopping her, Ryan moved forward and took my arm. Come on, Mom. I think it's best if you go now. We can talk about this when everyone's calmer. Together, they ushered me to the front door, my basket of gifts forgotten on the hall table. As I stepped onto the porch, tears now flowing freely, Amanda delivered the final blow. Just go away and leave us alone, she shouted loud enough for neighbors to hear. We don't need you hovering over us anymore. The door slammed behind me, leaving me standing alone on the porch of the house I had bought for my son, physically pushed out by the people I loved most in the world. In a daze, I made my way to my car. As I drove away, I called my friend Laura, barely able to speak through my tears. They pushed me out. Laura, I sobbed into my hands, free system. My own son put his hands on me and pushed me out of the house. Where are you now? Laura asked, her voice sharp with concern. Are you driving pull over, Serena? Pull over now and I'll come get you. I did as she instructed, parking at a grocery store lot a mile from Ryan's house. Laura arrived 20 minutes later, her face tight with worry. She drove me back to my house, listening as I poured out the whole ugly scene. That night, I barely slept, replaying every moment in my mind. The physical act of being pushed from the house hurt, but what cut deeper was seeing my son, the boy I had raised with such love and sacrifice standing by while it happened, even joining in. By morning, my sadness had crystallized into something harder, something that felt like resolve. I had given and given, compromising my own security and dignity, and it was never enough. It would never be enough. It was time to take back control of my life and my future, even if that meant making one of the hardest decisions I'd ever faced. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. I had been awake since 5, having given up on sleep after a night of tossing and turning. Laura had stayed over concerned about my state of mind, but she was still asleep in my guest room. I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold before me, and made a series of phone calls that would change everything. First, I called my financial advisor, Jim, at his home number. He had been handling my finances since before Frank died and had become a friend over the years. Despite it being a Sunday, he picked up on the third ring. "Serena, is everything all right?" "No, Jim, it's not," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to know my options regarding the house situation with Ryan." I explained what had happened, not sparing any details. Jim listened without interrupting, then sighed heavily. "I was afraid something like this might happen," he admitted. "It's why I insisted your name remain on the property." "What can I do, legally, I mean?" "The house is in your name, Serena. You have all the legal rights here. You could evict them if you wanted to, though I'm not suggesting that as a first step. Let me call Sarah Jenkins, the real estate attorney who handled the purchase. She can walk us through the options." An hour later, Jim, Sarah, and I were on a 3-way call. Sarah's legal assessment was clear. The agreement stipulated that Ryan and Amanda would make monthly payments toward eventual ownership with a formal review after 5 years, she explained. However, there was also a clause about maintaining a guest room for your use. If they've violated that term, you have grounds to reconsider the entire arrangement. "What does that mean in practical terms?" I asked. "You could give them notice that they need to either purchase the house outright at current market value or vacate within a reasonable time frame, typically 60 to 90 days. The thought of forcing my son and his pregnant wife out of their home made my stomach clench. But then I remembered Amanda's hands on my shoulders pushing me toward the door. "Just go away and leave us alone." The memory steeled my resolve. "I need time to think," I told Sarah, "but I want to understand all my options." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Laura came downstairs, took one look at my face, and wordlessly poured me a fresh cup of tea. "You're thinking of asking them to leave the house, aren't you?" she asked gently. "I don't know what I'm going to do," I admitted. Part of me wants to just let it go, to accept that this is how things are now. But another part remembers how they treated you," Laura finished for me. "Serena, I've watched you bend over backward for Ryan and Amanda for years. You've compromised your financial security, swallowed your feelings, and made excuses for their behavior. At some point, you have to protect yourself." I nodded slowly, tears threatening again. "But he's my son, Laura. My only child." "Yes, and you raised him to be better than this," she said firmly. "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary. Show him there are consequences for treating people, especially his mother, with such disrespect." By Monday morning, I had made my decision. With trembling fingers, I called the bank that held the mortgage on Ryan's house, my house. I explained that I wanted to cancel the special financing arrangement we had set up. The customer service representative transferred me to a loan officer who confirmed that as the sole owner on the deed, I had every right to make changes to the financial structure. Next, I drafted a formal letter with Sarah's help. It stated that due to breach of our verbal agreement regarding the guest room, I was exercising my right to terminate our current arrangement, Ryan and Amanda would have three options: purchase the house outright at current market value, continue renting from me under a formal landlord-tenant agreement with appropriate boundaries and expectations clearly defined, or vacate the property within 60 days. Before I could second-guess myself, I sent the letter by certified mail to ensure they couldn't claim they never received it. The response came faster than I expected. My phone rang at 7:30 that evening, Ryan's name flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "How could you do this?" he demanded without preamble, his voice shaking with fury. "Amanda's 7 months pregnant, and you're threatening to kick us out of our home." "It's not a threat, Ryan," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "And it's not your home, not legally. It's my home that I've allowed you to live in under certain conditions, conditions that you and Amanda made very clear no longer work for you. This is because we asked you to stay in a hotel when you visit. Are you that petty?" The accusation stung, but I held firm. "No, Ryan. This is because you and your wife physically pushed me out of my own property and told me to go away. This is because every agreement we've made has been gradually eroded with no regard for my feelings or my financial security." "We were upset. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. You can't seriously be doing this to your own son." "You put your hands on me," I said quietly. "Both of you. Do you have any idea what that felt like? To be physically removed from a house I paid for by my own child?" There was a brief silence. "Mom, I'm sorry if we hurt your feelings, but this reaction is completely out of proportion. You can't do this to us." "I'm not doing anything to you, Ryan. I'm protecting myself, something I should have done long ago. You have 3 reasonable options. Discuss them with Amanda and let me know your decision." "My father would be ashamed of you." He spat a final attempt to wound me. "Using money to control me like this." The mention of Frank, who had always taught Ryan to respect others, especially his mother, was the last straw. "Don't you dare bring your father into this," I said, my voice finally breaking. "He would be heartbroken to see how you've treated me. I've given you everything, Ryan. Everything. And it's never been enough." I ended the call before he could respond. The next few days brought escalating attempts to make me change my mind. Amanda's parents called first, attempting to reason with me, then making thinly veiled threats about their connections with powerful attorneys. Ryan left voicemails alternating between anger and tearful pleas. Amanda even sent a text suggesting that stress from this situation could cause her to lose the baby, a manipulation so transparent it only confirmed I was making the right decision. Through it all, I remained firm. I didn't respond to the Caldwell's threats. I didn't return Ryan's calls, instead communicating only through Sarah. And I deleted Amanda's text without replying. For 6 weeks, there was a tense standoff. I learned through mutual friends that Ryan and Amanda were frantically trying to secure financing to buy the house, but with Boston's high property values and their existing debts, no bank would approve them for a mortgage large enough. Finally, Sarah received a formal response from an attorney the Caldwells had hired. Ryan and Amanda would be vacating the property in 2 weeks. They had secured a rental apartment and requested that I not contact them during the move-out process. The day they moved out, I drove by the house from a distance, watching as movers loaded their furniture into a truck. I caught a glimpse of Amanda, her pregnancy now advanced, directing the movers with animated gestures. Ryan was carrying boxes to a second vehicle. Neither of them saw me, and I didn't approach. The sight of my son, now a stranger to me, brought fresh pain. But beneath the hurt was something else, a quiet certainty that I had done what needed to be done. Later that week, I learned from Laura, who had heard it from her son, who worked with one of Amanda's friends, that they had moved in with the Caldwells. Apparently, the rental apartment story had been a face-saving fiction. Despite their wealth and connections, the Caldwells had not been willing or able to help Ryan and Amanda purchase a house on short notice. 2 months later, I received a brief text from Ryan informing me that Amanda had given birth to a healthy baby boy named James Franklin. The middle name, my late husband's name, felt like an olive branch, however small. I responded with congratulations and asked if I might be allowed to meet my grandson. The answer was a brief, "Not yet. We need more time." Time passed. I sold the house, unable to bear living in it myself, with all its complicated memories. The proceeds went back into my retirement fund, securing the future I had nearly sacrificed. I moved to a smaller place closer to Laura and my other friends, focusing on rebuilding my life without the central presence of my son. 6 months after James was born, I received another text from Ryan. "Mom, can we meet for coffee?" "Just me." We met at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. Ryan looked tired with dark circles under his eyes and new lines around his mouth. The sleepless nights of new parenthood, perhaps, or the strain of living with his in-laws. "How are you?" he asked awkwardly after we had ordered. "I'm doing well," I said truthfully. "I've moved to a new condo, joined a book club, started volunteering at the community garden." He nodded, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Mom, I owe you an apology." I waited, not making it easier for him. "The way Amanda and I treated you, it was wrong. Especially that day when we pushed you out." He swallowed hard. "There's no excuse for that. None." "No," I agreed quietly. "There isn't. I've had a lot of time to think living with Amanda's parents," he continued. Well, let's just say I understand some things about Amanda better now." I raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "The thing is, Mom, I miss you. James should know his grandmother, and I need my mother." Tears sprang to my eyes, but I blinked them away. "Ryan, I love you. I always have, and I always will. But things can't go back to how they were before." "I know that," he said quickly. "I know we need to rebuild trust. I know Amanda needs to apologize too, though that might take more time. I want to start somewhere." We talked for over 2 hours that day. Ryan admitted that living with the Caldwells had been a wake-up call. Victoria micromanaged everything from how they parented James to what they ate for dinner. Amanda, used to her mother's controlling ways, accepted it, but Ryan was struggling. He had begun to see parallels between how Amanda treated me and how Victoria treated everyone around her. "I'm not making excuses," he said. But Amanda learned from her mother that relationships are about control. I didn't see it until we were living under the same roof as Victoria. We agreed to meet again the following week, just the two of us, and then again the week after that. Slowly, cautiously, we began to rebuild our relationship this time with clear boundaries and mutual respect. 3 months into our reconciliation, Ryan asked if I would like to meet James. "He's starting to smile and respond to people," he said. "He should know his grandmother." Our first meeting was at a park-neutral territory. Amanda came along stiff and formal but civil. She didn't apologize directly, but acknowledged that things got out of hand and said she was willing to move forward for James's sake. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The path to healing has been long and sometimes painful. There have been setbacks and difficult conversations. Amanda and I will probably never be close, but we've established a workable relationship built on clear boundaries and the common love we share for Ryan and James. Ryan and I continue to rebuild our bond, different now, but in some ways stronger, for having been broken and mindfully repaired. He still lives with the Caldwells, but he and Amanda are saving for their own place, one they'll buy entirely on their own, without financial entanglements. As for me, I've learned the hard way that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's dependence, or control, or fear disguised as devotion. True love, the kind that sustains and nurtures, must include respect, both for the other person and for oneself. When I look at my grandson now, his bright eyes and curious smile so reminiscent of Ryan at that age, I'm grateful for the painful journey that brought us here. Not because the hurt was necessary, but because the healing has made me stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than I've ever been. Standing up for myself cost me dearly in the short term. But in doing so, I taught my son an important lesson about respect and consequences that I hope he'll pass on to James someday. And I gave myself the precious gift of dignity, something no amount of money or family obligation should ever require us to surrender. I still have days when the memory of being pushed out of that house brings fresh pain. But those moments grow rarer as time passes and new, healthier memories take their place. The first time James reached for me, babbling Gamma. The Christmas morning when Ryan and Amanda brought him to my condo for breakfast. The Mother's Day card Ryan wrote by hand, telling me he was proud of me for being strong enough to hold him accountable. Life rarely gives us perfect resolutions. My relationship with my son will always bear the scars of what happened. But in the breaking and mending, we've both grown into better versions of ourselves, and that perhaps is the most valuable inheritance I could leave him, more precious than any house or financial security, the knowledge that it's never too late to stand up for yourself with dignity and grace, and never too late to begin again. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to establish boundaries with someone you love? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family relationships with courage and self-respect. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and peace.